He caught me teaching his daughter under a mango tree at the fanciest school in the city. Black SUVs humming, teachers, frozen security radios hissing. And there I was, barefoot, holding a plastic bag full of torn notes. If it were you standing there, what would you have done? I should have run right. But I didn't. I looked that billionaire in the eye and told him the truth. Not a polished version, not the kind that makes rich people feel generous. The kind you say when you've got nothing left to lose and your heart is louder than your fear. Thing is, my story didn't begin at that tree. It started beside a gutter where my mother rocked and sang to a bottle like it was a sleeping baby. Some mornings she woke up laughing at the sun. Other mornings she screamed at shadows until her voice broke in half. People called her crazy. They called me worse. Gutter girl, rubbish child, cursed. You learn to swallow names when you don't have food to swallow. You know what I mean? We lived under a broken kiosk that didn't belong to us, a piece of shade we borrowed from the heat. If it rained, we were wet. If it was hot, we burned. Our mattress was a flattened box, our blanket was whatever we told ourselves, so sleep would take pity. I traced letters in dust with a stick, whispered answers. To nobody pretended there was a teacher somewhere who knew my name. One day there was. She ran a food stand, and everyone called her Auntie Linda, a woman with a laugh big enough to carry a tired day. She caught me counting change in my head and asked where I learned it. I told her I listened outside classroom windows until the teachers chased me off. She gave me a notebook, then a second-hand uniform that smelled like other people's lives, then a seat in a public school where chalk sang across a board, and my hand shot up before I remembered to be small. For a handful of weeks, I was just a kid in a classroom. I remember the way the teacher's eyebrows rose when I answered, the way numbers lined up and made sense, the way a nod felt like sunlight. Then one night, Auntie Linda came home holding a white envelope with tears standing like bright beads in her eyes. "My sister got my papers," she whispered. "I'm leaving." I thought she meant we. She didn't. She paid my fees to the end of the term, hugged me like she was trying to memorize my shape, and flew away into a sky I could not follow. When the term ended, the headmistress called me in and said the sentence that closes 1,000 doors. No fees, no school. The gates clicked, the dust swirled, and I stood there with a damp notebook and a pencil chewed to the wood, listening to the laughter on the other side like it was happening in a different country. Life got smaller. A drunk took our kiosk and swung a belt when I tried to sleep there. The corner where my mother used to beg belonged to boys with glue on their lips and knives in their eyes. So I sold water. I dodged buses, insults, hands that grabbed too hard. A man stuffed a bill in my tray, and a boy snatched it before my thank you reached my mouth. Hunger learned my name and said it slow. I lost coins to thieves' food, to heat and pride, to days when there was nothing left to protect. But I didn't lose the thing that kept thumping behind my ribs. Every afternoon I found a fence, a cracked window, any gap where the sound of learning leaked. Multiplication tables, through rust poems, through leaves, the low rhythm of a teacher's voice that made my pulse match the beat. I wrote on the backs of flyers and the inside of cereal boxes and clean corners of plastic bags. The world said I didn't belong in a classroom. My brain didn't care. One day, I slid along the back wall of a private academy too shiny to look at directly. Gold paint glass windows, uniforms with names stitched on the pocket. Kids stepped out of SUVs like they were walking off planes. Near the back field, a mango tree threw a soft green shade over a cracked window. I crouched beneath the branches, pencil, ready breath held. Fractions that day. Halves and quarters, the trick of making different denominators speak the same language. I was mouthing answers when I felt eyes on me. Not a guard. Not a teacher. A girl my age with polished shoes and braids that said someone cared about her every morning. "You're the one they chase away," she said. "Not mean, just curious." "I just want to learn," I said, already turning to run. "I won't make noise, I promise." She sat instead. "I don't get fractions," she whispered. "Can you show me?" "Listen. I've never had power. But explaining something and watching a face light up like a lamp turning on, that's a special kind of power." I showed her how to find common ground between numbers that didn't match, drew little circles split into equal parts, let her do the last step so the victory felt like hers. Within minutes, she was solving problems she'd been failing all term. She covered her mouth and laughed through her fingers. "I get it," she said, like someone had finally handed her a key. Then she looked at me the way people look at fireworks and whispered, "You're amazing." I didn't know where to put a word like that, so I folded it up and tucked it in my pocket for later. Her name was Jessica. She said people called her dumb and whispered that her dad paid the school to keep promoting her. "They clap when I wear a nice dress," she said, "not when I try." That lit something stubborn inside me. "You're not dumb," I said. "You're scared." I told her to read like she was talking to me, not like she was begging a grade for mercy. She tried, stumbled, tried again. I clapped. She smiled like sunlight decided to stay. We met again the next day, and the next, and the next. Every lunch break, same tree, same window, our secret classroom with a roof made of leaves. She brought a lunchbox, I brought scraps of paper. She brought me a brush one day, a small blue notepad. Another day, once a pair of slippers I rarely wore because I knew how fast nice things run away. I told her stories about stars falling in love with street kids and mothers healed by rain. She told me about crowded rooms where everybody laughed and nobody listened. We traded worlds in the space between the bell and the next class, two girls the same height when we sat. She got braver. I got careful. "I'll tell my dad," she said one afternoon, spaghetti sauce on her lip and fire in her eyes. I shook my head hard. "Please don't. Rich people don't like their daughters sitting with girls like Mitty." She leaned in until her voice went soft enough to break me. "You're not cursed," she said. "You're magic." Words that gentle can hurt in a sweet way. Yeah, that happened. Then I was late. My mother ran into traffic chasing a car she swore had stolen her wings. Fear makes you stronger than you think. I pulled her back, washed her face with water that wasn't clean enough, and still had to be enough, settled her in a patch of shade, and ran. By the time I reached the school, Jessica was pacing under the tree with 2 spoons and a biscuit tucked into a corner. She hugged me like she meant it, and for a second I forgot the world could be cruel. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. At exactly 12:35, the hum began. Black SUVs gliding into the compound like sharks through shallow water. Teachers straightened their collars. Security men touched their radios. Kids rose onto their toes. Jessica's hands went cold in mine. "My dad," she said. "Chief Agu. Oil money. TV panels. Charity galas with his name on the banner. The kind of man whose schedule tells other people what time it is." He stepped out in a black caftan sandals that probably cost more than every meal I'd had that month, 2 assistants behind him, with eyes that made paper nervous. He saw his daughter first, then he saw me. Torn brown dress, bare feet, plastic bag for a backpack, half a biscuit clutched like I'd stolen the moon. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "What are you doing out here?" he asked Jessica. "Having lunch," she said, standing taller than I'd ever seen her stand, with who his gaze slid to me like a spotlight. The whole lawn held its breath. "This is my friend," she said. "Her name is Skola. She teaches me." Silence hit the ground like a dropped plate. One assistant shifted his weight like Earth had suddenly become uncomfortable. The other stared at a tree, like this scene would disappear if he didn't blink. "Excuse me," the billionaire said, and those two words carried decades of boardrooms. "She's why I'm doing well," Jessica said, and then she did the bravest thing I've ever seen. She reached back and took my hand and didn't let go. Here's the twist. I expected a warning, a threat, a clean broom to sweep the dirt away from the polished floor. Instead, he asked me a question. "Who are your parents, child?" I swallowed my fear until it tasted like iron. "I don't know my father, sir. My mother is sick. We sleep where the street lets us. You come here every day and teach my daughter," he said softer than I expected. I nodded. My knees shook like lyrics at the end of a sad song. Jessica's fingers tightened around mine like a promise. "Take me to your mother," he said. "Wait. Read that again." He didn't say get out. He didn't say call security. He said take me to your mother. We drove to mile 12 in a convoy that made my street look like a movie set someone forgot to clean. Flies buzzed. Smoke hung low. The world smelled like old fire and fried hope. My mother sat on the curb, rocking, laughing at something nobody could see. Her dress was torn in the way that tells you hands haven't been kind to it. He crouched beside her like he was kneeling in church. "Madame," he said gently. She looked up and asked if he'd brought the sky she left in his car. He nodded like that made perfect sense, then stood and told his assistant call Dr. Aisha. "Psychiatric unit. Full treatment. Today." He turned to me and did the thing that rerouted my life. "From today," he said, lowering himself so we were eye level, "you are not a homeless girl. You have a father now." I didn't cry. People think tears prove feeling. Sometimes you feel so much the well is empty. Even when I watched an ambulance door close on my mother, even when hot water turned brown as it ran off my skin that night, even when a woman I'd never met handed me pajamas and called me dear like her mouth was trying on a new word, I didn't cry. I touched my arm every few minutes to make sure I was real. He introduced me to the house like a press conference. "This is Scola," he said. "She's staying with us. Treat her like you treat my daughter." Power sounds different when it commands kindness. The room went quiet. Then the cook saved me extra plantains and the driver asked how my day went like he wanted to hear the answer. The next morning I put on a uniform that fit like it had been waiting for me. Jessica clapped and said we looked like twins. I stared at the mirror and didn't recognize the girl staring back. I kept waiting for a knock and a voice saying the joke was over, time to go back to the dust. No one knocked. So I walked through the front gate of the same school where I used to crouch under leaves. Whispers followed us like perfume. Teachers blinked. Kids elbowed each other and said, "That's her, that's the girl from the fence." I sat in class and raised my hand and watched doubt drop off faces like old paint. At lunch, we sat under the mango tree on purpose, no cracked window, no running. Just two girls sharing a box of food and a world. Do you think that's fair? That a uniform changes the way people hear the same voice? Be honest. If it were you, what would you have done when you saw a barefoot girl and a billionaire's daughter splitting a biscuit under the same tree? Meanwhile, the hospital called with cautious hope. Words like stabilize and medication and time. The first visit, my mother didn't know me. She yelled at a corner, cried because a ghost stole her shoe. On the fifth visit, she looked straight at me and said, I looked like the sky, and I had to sit down because my legs forgot how to be legs. At home, comfort felt like a test. I could fail by breathing wrong. I flinched when people raised a hand to wave. I slept light because safety can feel like a trick after too many nights outside. But slowly, the knots loosened. Jessica and I did homework at the same table. Teachers stopped treating me like a rumor. The principal asked where I came from, then realized the answer didn't matter, and asked what I wanted to do next instead. One night, Chief Agu called me into his study. Dark wood, quiet air, a desk that had birthed deals. He slid a tablet across the surface loaded with every book I needed. "You changed my daughter's life," he said. "You were never invisible, Scola. People just weren't looking long enough." Pattern interrupt. I'm going to say something that might make you roll your eyes. Money didn't save me. A decision did. Don't get me wrong, the house and the uniform and the tablet helped. But the hinge of my story is the moment a powerful person chose to see a powerless person and move toward the pain instead of away from it. That choice is available to more people than there are billionaires on Earth. Weeks turned into a rhythm. Wake school lunch that drifted from the mango tree to the cafeteria homework, with Jessica visits to my mother, where hope crept in like morning. My grades climbed. Her confidence bloomed. Kids started sitting under the mango tree like it was a landmark. Guards nodded at me like we had always been cool. Parents stared like I was a lesson, and they weren't sure if they liked the answer. That's okay. Discomfort is the price of waking up. Midway through the term, the principal called me in with 2 teachers and the man who now introduced me as his daughter. My stomach did flips. The principal smiled and said they wanted me to represent the school at a regional competition. I said yes before my voice had time to be afraid. On the ride home, Jessica leaned on my shoulder and said she was proud. I told her the truth. I'd still be outside if you hadn't held my hand in front of your dad. She shook her head. We did that together. Yeah, we did. Let me ask you something hard. What do we owe the kids the world forgets to count? What do the wealthy owe the poor, and what do the poor owe themselves? I don't have a policy paper. I have a tree and a memory. I go back to mile 12 with food and notebooks when I can. I sit with kids who know the shape of hunger better than the shape of letters and show them both. I'm not a savior. I'm a reminder. You can help someone cross a line you didn't draw. One evening, I sat in the garden under a different mango tree. Trimmed grass, clean tiles, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own pulse. The sky turned the color of ripe fruit. I whispered a sentence I had held in my mouth for years. I have a father, not by blood, by decision. And a mother who is walking slowly, carefully back to herself. I put my hand over my heart and made a promise. I won't waste this chance, not because I owe a rich man, but because I owe the girl I used to be crouched behind a window whispering answers to nobody. Now here's where I probably make a few of you mad, and that's fine. I can take it. My life changed because a billionaire walked onto a field and chose compassion. But it should not take a billionaire for a brilliant kid to get a seat in a classroom. Talent should not depend on who notices you by accident. Do you think it's fair that a fence decides a future? If your answer is no, then why are there so many closed gates? Some will say, that's not how the world works. I'll say that's exactly how the world keeps working until someone interrupts it. In my story, interruption looked like a girl with spaghetti on her lip saying she's my friend, and a powerful man saying, take me to your mother. In yours, it might be paying one term's fee, volunteering on a Saturday, telling a kid they're not dumb, they're scared, then staying long enough to prove them right. So tell me, if it were you, what would you have done when you saw me under that mango tree? Would you have laughed, called security, snapped a picture, or sat down and asked to learn too? Does my story prove charity works, or does it prove the system is broken? Be honest. Be loud. I'm listening. If this story hit you in the heart, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from what you would have done, who opened a gate for you, and who you might open one for next. Share this with someone who needs a reason to believe in second chances. And if you want more true stories told straight, with the grit and the grace and the parts people don't usually say out loud, hit subscribe, tap like ring the bell. We've got more to talk about, and the next chapter is already on its way.